All right, so today we're going on a deep dive into this short story, Manhole V. It's
Hmm.
by V.N.Giritharan, and it was originally written in Tamil.
Okay.
So the setting for this story is kind of unusual, right? It's a bustling Toronto street. You've got all the noise and the crowds.
Hmm.
But right in the middle of it all, there's this manhole. And on top of this manhole lives Sammy, a homeless man.
Yeah. You don't often see that kind of juxtaposition. A modern city, all that hustle and bustle, and then you've got Sammy choosing to exist outside of all that. Just makes you wonder about his story, why he's there.
Yeah, it's a great setup. Very intriguing. Like, what can we learn from a story about someone who seems so marginalized living in a big metropolis?
Yeah, I mean, when you first start reading, you kind of get this picture in your head of Sammy, right? Like, the author describes him sitting in this yogic posture with this long hair and a beard, always smoking.
I have to admit, I pictured him like one of those wayside vendors you see sometimes, just kind of watching the world go by.
Yeah, I can see that. But then the story kind of takes you deeper. The narrator, who's a hot dog vendor, actually calls Sammy a seer, like a wise man, a mystic almost. It makes you rethink that first impression, doesn't it?
It does. Like, it's not just about his appearance, it's about how other characters perceive him. Like, they see something more in him.
Exactly. And then there's this other character, the Nigerian taxi driver. On the surface, he seems successful, but we learn he's secretly driving a cab in the winter just so he can keep his chieftain status back in Nigeria. It's kind of wild, right?
It is. And it makes you think both he and Sammy are navigating these two worlds, the one they come from and the one they're living in now.
Totally. And that brings us to this whole theme of identity, which is like woven throughout the story. Sammy is of Native American descent, but there's this real mystery surrounding his past. There's this one line where he says Indians are overflowing all over the world, but then he makes it clear that neither he nor the narrator, who's Tamil, are considered Indian in that context.
Yeah, it's a real head scratcher, like how do we use these labels and who gets categorized as what, especially in a city like Toronto?
Absolutely. And the story doesn't shy away from that complexity. Remember how some characters use Indian and Paki interchangeably?
Yeah.
Despite all the historical tension between India and Pakistan, those words just get thrown around. It kind of highlights how easy it is to misunderstand, even to be prejudiced without realizing it.
It's a good point. And Sammy, beyond the identity stuff, he's also portrayed as a very philosophical character.
Yeah.
He sings this little song about how unpredictable time and fate can be.
Yeah, and he talks about the satanic dance of fate while he's watching the Parliament building. And knowing that another chief, the Nigerian taxi driver, is out there driving a cab.
What do you think he's trying to say with those observations?
Well, there's definitely this sense of detachment, like he's observing everything from a distance. He's not caught up in all the everyday stuff, which gives him a unique perspective, almost like he's above it all.
And then one day, poof, Sammy disappears.
Yeah.
Just gone. All his belongings left behind. What went through your mind when you first read that?
I mean, the author really knows how to build suspense. You immediately know something's wrong, but you don't know what.
Right.
And the hot dog vendor and the taxi driver, they're both worried. You can tell they've formed this bond with Sammy despite their differences. So they go looking for him.
And that's when they find him, right?
Yeah.
Inside the manhole.
Inside the manhole. He died in there, alone, completely unnoticed. It's just heartbreaking, isn't it?
It is. It's like this stark irony. Here's a man who lived on the margins of society, but his death happens right in the heart of the city, practically under the shadow of the Parliament building. It makes you question what it really means to be seen, to be acknowledged.
Yeah. Totally.
And that ending, too. What struck you about the way Sammy's story ends?
Well, there's definitely this sense of completion, like his story has reached its natural end. But there's also this lingering sadness, like his death is a reminder of how fragile life is, how easily someone can be forgotten, even in a city as busy as Toronto. And it really makes you think about your own ideas of success and belonging.
It leaves you with a lot to ponder, for sure. Like, what does Sammy's story tell us about the lives we don't see, the struggles people face, even in familiar places?
It's a reminder that everyone has a story, a life that's much richer and more complex than we might realize. And sometimes those stories stay hidden, lost to the flow of time. It's a sobering thought, but it also makes you appreciate the connections you do make and the stories you get to hear.
It makes you wonder about all the stories that are out there just waiting to be discovered.
Exactly.
Well, let's take a break here. When we come back, we'll dig a little deeper into some of the symbolism and the nuances of the story. Okay, so we were talking about the symbolism in the story, and I keep coming back to the manhole.
Yeah, it's more than just a place where Sammy lives, right?
Right. It represents something more.
Like what? What do you think it represents?
Well, it's this dark, enclosed space hidden away beneath the city,
Right.
almost like a reflection of Sammy's own internal state. Like he's isolated from the world above.
Yeah, it's his own little world down there,
Yeah.
separate from all the chaos and the indifference of the city.
And it kind of makes you think about those hidden struggles, you know? Not just for people experiencing homelessness, but for everyone.
Yeah.
We all have our own manholes, in a way, those
Mm.
places we retreat to when we're facing our own anxieties, our own internal struggles.
That's a really interesting way to look at it. It makes you realize how much we judge people based on what we see on the outside.
Exactly. And that's what the story challenges us to do, right?
Yeah.
To move beyond those surface judgments. Sammy, he might have chosen to live in this unconventional way, but he was clearly intelligent, observant, with his own unique perspective on life.
Yeah. It's not like he was just out of it, you know?
Right.
He was very aware of what was going on around him.
Right. And then his death inside the manhole becomes even more symbolic,
How so?
Well, it's almost like society's failure to see him, to acknowledge his humanity, is what leads to his demise.
It's a powerful statement. Like, people can be overlooked and forgotten so easily, even in a crowded city.
And it makes it even more poignant that he was found by the hot dog vendor and the taxi driver, the two people who took the time to get to know him.
Yeah. Those little acts of kindness, those connections, they can really make a difference.
Absolutely. And it brings us back to those questions we were talking about before about success and belonging. Like, what does it really mean to live a meaningful life? Is it about material things, status, or is it about something deeper, something more connected to our shared humanity?
Yeah. Sammy's story, short as it is, really makes you grapple with those questions.
It does. It reminds us that sometimes the most profound insights come from the most unexpected places. Even a busy street in Toronto can hold these extraordinary stories if you just look for them.
It's true. This deep dive has been full of surprises. What would you say is the most important message the author is trying to convey through Sammy's story?
Well, for me, it's a call for empathy and understanding.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that everyone, no matter their circumstances, deserves to be seen, heard, and valued.
Right.
It's about recognizing that shared humanity in everyone we meet, even those who might seem invisible or forgotten.
And it's a good reminder that even in a city as diverse as Toronto, we're all connected by those shared experiences. The joys, the sorrows, all the complexities of life.
Exactly. And sometimes it's the people who live on the margins of society who can offer the most profound insights into what it means to be human.
I love that. This has been such a great exploration. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface, though.
Huh.
What final thoughts would you like to leave our listener with today?
I'd say take some time to reflect on Sammy's story and think about how it might challenge your own perceptions of the world. Like, what hidden stories are waiting to be discovered in your own community? And how can you contribute to a society that values empathy, understanding, and inclusion?
Those are great questions. And even though Sammy's story ends tragically, I think it also offers a glimmer of hope. It shows that even small acts of kindness and connection can make a real difference.
It's a reminder that even in a busy city, taking a moment for quiet reflection and contemplation can lead to a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
It's interesting how the story takes place in Toronto, a city known for its multiculturalism and diversity. But even in a place that prides itself on being inclusive, Sammy still seems to fall through the cracks. Why do you think that is?
It strikes me that Sammy's not just invisible to the larger society, but he's also kind of an outsider, even within the marginalized community. Like, he doesn't fit the stereotype of a typical homeless person. He's not begging for money. He's not struggling with addiction. He seems to have found a certain level of peace and contentment in his unconventional lifestyle.
Yeah, you're right. He even refuses to take aspirin when he's sick.
Mhm.
It's almost like he's deliberately chosen this path, this way of being.
His refusal of aspirin, even when ill, is fascinating. What do you make of this choice, listener? Is it a rejection of societal norms? A stoic acceptance of his condition? It certainly makes you wonder what led him to this point in his life.
And we don't get a lot of background information, do we? There are these hints about a past he's chosen to leave behind.
Yeah, remember how he wouldn't talk about his origins when the narrator asked? It's like he's carrying a secret, a burden he doesn't want to share.
It adds another layer to his character, doesn't it? He's not just a homeless man. He's an individual with experiences that have shaped him, a past that remains a mystery.
And that makes his death even more poignant. Not only has he died alone and unnoticed, but we never get to hear the full story of his life.
It's like a reminder that everyone has a story, a life that's more than what we see on the surface.
Sammy's story serves as a potent reminder. Beneath every surface lies a tapestry of experiences. We, as active listeners and engaged citizens, should strive to unravel these hidden narratives.
And sometimes those stories remain untold, lost to time.
It's a sobering thought, but it also underscores the importance of cherishing the connections we make and appreciating the stories we do have the opportunity to hear.
I think that's a beautiful way to frame it. Manhole V is a story that stays with you. It challenges your assumptions, it makes you think, and ultimately it reminds us of how important empathy, understanding, and human connection really are.
If we connect this back to the bigger picture, this story is a powerful reminder that even in a bustling modern city, there are unseen lives, untold stories, and individuals yearning for connection. It's a call to look beyond the surface and acknowledge the humanity in everyone we encounter.
So listener, as you go about your day, keep Sammy's story in mind. Take a moment to notice those around you, to listen to their stories, and to extend a hand of kindness. You never know what profound insights or connections you might discover. It's really interesting how that refusal to take aspirin, like you were saying, connects to this whole idea of choice in this story. He's rejecting help, even though he's obviously not feeling well.
Yeah, like he's made this decision to live outside of all the systems that, most of us just take for granted. He doesn't want to be fixed, doesn't want to be saved. It's like he's content with his life, even with all the hardships.
It makes his relationship with the manhole even more fascinating. Right, like it's more than just a place to sleep.
Right, it's like a symbol. It represents his choice to separate himself from the world.
And his death in the manhole then becomes even more symbolic, doesn't it?
It does. It's like a final act of defiance, almost. Even in death, he remains outside of society's grasp, He can't be categorized, can't be defined. His story, his life, even his death, they're all his own.
And that brings us back to that question we keep coming back to. What does it really mean to belong? Is it about fitting in, following all the rules? Or is it something more individual?
I think maybe true belonging comes from embracing your own unique journey, even if it leads you down a path that's less traveled. Sammy's story, it's so simple, but it really makes you think about what it means to live a meaningful life, to make choices that are true to yourself, even if they don't fit the mold.
It's a powerful message, especially in a world that often tells us to conform, to measure success by external things.
Exactly. And it reminds us that sometimes the most profound lessons come from people who exist on the fringes of society, the ones who challenge our assumptions and make us confront those uncomfortable truths.
Well, Manhole V, it's a story that definitely challenges you, makes you think. It's a reminder that beneath the surface of our busy cities, there are all these untold stories, lives lived on their own terms, individuals who make us question what it means to belong.
It's a call to look closer, to listen to those stories, to acknowledge the humanity in everyone we encounter.
To wrap up this deep dive, I think Sammy's story is ultimately about connection, about seeing the unseen, hearing the unheard, and understanding that even in a bustling metropolis, we're all connected in ways we might not always realize.
So to our listener, as you go about your day, remember Sammy, remember his choice, his story, and as you walk the streets of your own city, take a moment to notice those around you. Listen to their stories, offer a kind word, a helping hand. You never know what profound insights or connections you might discover.